National Preparedness Month. Today, we're talking about cover. Cover is anything that's in between you and the elements. It starts with the clothing that you're wearing. It may include types of personal protective equipment like safety shades or like gloves to protect you from the environment. Your eyes, obviously, you don't want to jack your eyes up. And those of us that have, can see, we're born with fully functioning eyes or have somehow managed to retain mostly functioning eyes through the battle of life. You don't want to lose your ability to see. So it's highly overlooked, but safety gear for your eyeballs, it's a big deal. Penetrating eye wounds, yeah, they suck, but just getting dust or dirt in your eye can greatly diminish your effectiveness, right? Same thing with your hands. Your hands are the number one tool that you use to interface with your environment. And so if you jack your hands up, you're gonna have a hard time interfacing with your environment, whether this is a training exercise or a survival scenario or just everyday life. You need your hands. I talked about clothing. So clothing should be adequate footwear for the environment that you're in, as well as socks and spare socks, if not spare footwear in your bug out gear or your rucksack, whatever the hell you want to call it, I don't care. But having, at least additional socks, good to go. And then the type of pants that you wear, going back to cover, pants and shirts and long sleeves and hoodies and flannel jackets and all of that. Obviously layering, especially in the winter, but being able to remove clothing as you're moving so that you don't perspire and become hypothermic. But also from a stealth or camouflage standpoint, most people think camouflage and they think, something like this. Oh, look, Marpat Woodland and a pair of Belvilles. How cool. Yeah, cool out here. But if I'm walking around the mall or downtown, I'm gonna stick out like a sore thumb, right? So what you cover your body with matters, and it should match your operational environment. Whatever environment you're in, whatever kind of operations you're doing. The next thing to think about with cover is the ability to make shelter. But before we go to shelter, I want to talk about from a casualty care standpoint and from a shelter standpoint. Many of y'all are probably familiar with these. I've got one in my chest rig right now. I've actually got two in my chest rig. One is a standalone and one in my first aid kit, my blowout kit. This is a Mylar blanket, space blanket. This is an Atomic Bear Prepare to Survive emergency blanket. I've got a case of these that I bought off the interwebs years ago before I owned Refuge Medical. And this is literally space age technology, regardless of how believable NASA may or may not be. This Mylar foil was developed by NASA, DARPA et al. And it simply reflects body heat. It does not make you warmer. It reflects body heat that's already there. How it's used is pretty basic, but also there's nuance to it. You lay it over the top of a casualty or over the top of yourself to reflect your existing body heat back at you. Just like if you wrap a burrito in tin foil, the tin foil doesn't make the burrito hotter, but it does retain whatever heat is already there, right? And that's important in a TCCC, Tactical Combat Casualty Care, also called T3C scenario, because hypothermia is one corner of the lethal triad. It's blood loss, hypothermia, acidosis. We don't want that. Suffice it to say, that's all bad, right? And so we don't want somebody to go hypothermic. For every 1 degree and drop in body temperature, the body's time to form a clot doubles. So you go from approximately 10 minutes with direct pressure at 98.6. At 97.6, it's 20 minutes. At 96.6, it's 40 minutes. At 95.6, it's 80 minutes, right? So it's exponential, not linear. So we want to keep the casualty warm. You can also use this to improvise a shelter or to improvise a sleep system. Great addition to, for example, the ranger roll, right? You throw your lay your poncho down, spread it out, then lay a Mylar blanket out, shiny side toward you, then lay your poncho liner over the top of that, your whoopee, then roll up, and this will reflect a lot more body heat back towards you. The key point in that is that the poncho liner, your whoopee, keeps this from touching your skin. And that's important because these aren't breathable. And if this is up directly against your skin, because it doesn't breathe, moisture is going to form on the skin. And so if you're having to set up your sleep system, do an overnight in a cold environment, or if you have a casualty in a cold environment, having this blanket directly on them is going to be a problem, because you can actually induce hypothermia because of the perspiration, respiration of the casualty or you in your sleep kit. Now you're going to get wet, and that's a problem, especially if it's cold. All right? So you may be familiar with something like this from a cover standpoint, both for shelter making or for casualty care. Go ahead and put that back in my kit. Stand by. Some steak seasoning from the last time I was cooking out here in the woods. We'll get to casualty care in another video. Just got to reload this little pouch. There we go. Yeah. Montreal steak seasoning. No, it's not the devil's lettuce. Don't worry about it. All right. So back to cover. What about improvising a shelter? For your bug out fantasy, or if you're doing an FTX or operationally operating like an operator, I don't think if you're doing any of those things, you should have to improvise a shelter. I think you should know how to make shelter because you've done it 100 times already, and you should have a system that works for you 90% of the time, whether it's summer or winter, or it's raining, or you're in a drought, or the wind's blowing 70 miles an hour, or whatever. I like to do a diamond fly with a single ridge line tied off to a tree, like that little tree right there. I would tie the ridge line up about 3 to 4 feet up, depending on the wind conditions. So about here, come down with the line, then lay my poncho over it in a diamond pattern, stake out the corners. How do you make a stake? You take your knife and you take a stick and you split it and carve it and make a stake. Drive it into the ground. Okay. But those tarps, those ponchos, are usually silicone impregnated nylon, aka a sil tarp, silicone impregnated nylon tarp. And the reason I've got this out here is to show you this, because this is a pretty cool advancement. This is now being spec'd for Marine Corps in their medic bags. And there's rumor, I don't know if this has become true or not, that they are going to be adding these to their IFACs. If they do, this is a little bulky for an IFAC, but it will absolutely fit in a cargo pocket. You're probably asking yourself, cool story, bro, what the hell is that? This is an APLS. This is a nylon sil tarp. See it? Nylon impregnated, see it shining? Nylon impregnated sil tarp, but on the inside of it is a Mylar blanket. These are really cool. We've got them in the store at Refuge. You can also find them elsewhere on the interwebs. You don't have to buy one of these, but I've been playing with this one for a while, and they're really cool. As far as a long-term option, I wouldn't expect this to survive multiple uses. It might survive a 3-day FTX. But as an emergency or improvised shelter, this is really cool because it's water resistant, silicone impregnated nylon on this side, but it's also reflective for body heat on this side. Now, on a day like today, where it's going to be over 100 degrees and the heat index is 120, I don't really want that body heat reflecting back at me. But I could also use this for signaling, couldn't I? Yep. And I've got a nylon tarp here with me. And so for Wilderness survival, search and rescue, bug out. This is a pretty cool piece of kit because it combines your nylon tarp, and it's about the size of a poncho, a USGI poncho. Combines a nylon tarp with a Mylar blanket. And again, this is the APLS, Alpha Papa Lima Sierra, APLS. And it's a pretty cool piece of kit. So in your bag, in your rucksack, in your bug out gear, whatever, you should have a tarp. The one that I run is a 3 meter by 3 meters. So that's approximately 10 by 10 nylon impregnated tarp, and it's got tie outs at each corner and then a couple of tie outs on each side. I don't know, 10 tie outs total, 12 tie outs total, something like that. That allows me to make half a dozen different shelters without trying, just using the tarp. But cover is not simply, what am I going to sleep in tonight? It's more than that. It's blending into your environment, whatever your environment may be. It's your PPE. It's your tactical combat casualty care, prevention of hypothermia. It's a lot of different things. Don't sleep on cover. Sleep in cover. Y'all have a blessed day. Shalom.